On July 26, 2023, a coup occurred in the Republic of Niger. The coup leader, Abdurrahmane Tichiani, detained the democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. This would become the most public coup of a democratically elected president in West Africa, mainly due to the threat by ECOWAS to intervene to return the country to civilian rule.
West African states have imposed travel and financial sanctions on the leaders of the coup in Niger. The ECOWAS regional bloc is also threatening to use force if Niger's ousted elected president is not reinstated.
Many longed for the showdown between the two sides, but the show would not materialize. But even as ECOWAS pondered its next move, after the Nigerian junta failed to heed to its threats, the Gabon military deposed Ali Bongo Ondimba after being declared the winner of a disputed election. But many have asked whether the coup reflects a time of French reckoning. In any case, coup leaders have trained their ire on France, going to as far as discontinuing military alliance with France and even banning French as their national language. But even as many see the coups through the lens of France losing influence in West Africa, the coups are more ominous for the citizens of the affected countries. So, why are coups spreading like wildfire in West Africa, and what does this mean for Africans who hope to lift themselves out of poverty? For us to understand the wave of coups spreading through West Africa, we must zoom out a little and look at history. You see, coups in West Africa are nothing new. It's like all countries colonized by France appear to share a French colonization curse. Countries that are former colonies of France have such high prevalence of coup d'etats that they have been named the coup belt. The coup belt represents a group of countries in West Africa and the Sahel with a high prevalence of coups. This is the Sahel region, which is an ecoclimatic and biogeographic realm of transition between the Sahara to the north and Sudan savanna to the south. And these are the countries in Africa that have had coup d'etat since 2020. These are the former French colonies, also called Francophone. Almost all of them have been countries in crisis. DRC has been a hotbed of instability since the independence in 1960. Cameroon is in a civil war called the Agrophone crisis. Central African Republic is in an ongoing sectarian civil war. Chad, Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso and Guinea are under the leadership of military juntas. So it is true that former French colonies are ailing from never-ending economic and security crises that have plunged these countries into perpetual economic malaise and political instability. But former French colonies most affected by coup d'etats include Burkina Faso, Chad, Gabon, Guinea, Mali and Niger. Each of these countries have had several successful or failed coup d'etats since their independence. However, the current coups have gained international attention due to social media and the rapidness with which the coups are happening. Niger has had about 8 coup events since independence, of which 7 were successful. Burkina Faso has had 5 coup d'etats since 2003, all of which were successful. Chad, on the other hand, have had 2 coup d'etats since independence, both of which were successful. Gabon has had 3 coup events since independence, but only the 2023 one was successful. Guinea has had 3 coup d'etats since independence, with all of them successful. Lastly, Mali has had 5 coup d'etats since independence, with all of them successful. In all these former French colonies, there have been at least 2 coup attempts in the last 10 years. So it is true that there could be a French colonization curse. So, what are the factors causing a resurgence of coup d'etats in West Africa, and former French colonies, despite a decade of promised return to democracy. Policy Research Institute has an opinion on this. They argue that economic malice makes democratically elected leaders very unpopular. For us to understand this, we must look at the macroeconomic realities of citizens in these affected countries. This is GDP per capita of these West African countries under junta leadership. I mean, all of them except Gabon have a GDP per capita that is less valuable than the iPhone 14. Even for Gabon, which boasts of a GDP per capita of $8,635 in 2021, much of the wealth comes from exploitation of oil, which is controlled by state actors. In fact, about 33% of the population lives on less than $5 a day. With the political class unable to lift civilians out of poverty, public support for coup d'etats is high, with the civilians celebrating the posting of elected leaders every time a coup happens.
The response to the coup inside Niger, there was first some pro-democracy demonstrations, but those were quickly replaced by pro-junta demonstrations. Some of the individuals in the crowds in Niamey, the capital, were brandishing Russian flags and pro-Russia statements.
Weak institutions have also been blamed for the high prevalence of coup d'etats in Africa. You see, in these countries, the legislature, the judiciary, and the police are rife with corruption. Rent seekers corrupt the ruling class to extract as much rent as possible from the exploitation of limited natural resources. Police cannot prosecute powerful and corrupt leaders, and neither can judges jail them. These conditions of weak institutions create a perfect storm for coup d'etats, as the weak institutions are unable to address emerging security issues or solve political problems. The Sahel region is struggling with terrorist insurgency, which provides a fertile ground for coups as democratically elected leaders are unable to maintain security. Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Guinea coups all stem from political instability caused by terrorism within their borders. Weak institutions have also opened these countries to unproductive external influence. These are the countries where Russia has used the Wagner Group to extend its influence. In most of these African countries with coup d'etats, Russia has used Wagner to prop up dictatorial regimes. I mean, these are Wagner mercenaries acting as presidential guards to the president of Chad, and these are Niger residents chanting pro-Russian slogans as their civilian government was ousted.
Protesters have attacked the French embassy in the capital Niamey, denouncing the former colonial power. Thousands turned out in support of the coup leader, General Abdurrahman Chiani. Many have waved Russian flags, chanting the name of Vladimir Putin. The European Union has suspended financial and security ties with Niger.
But while instability and poverty could explain these coups, these countries are not facing a unique problem in Africa. Other African countries face instability and even worse levels of poverty. I mean, look at Zimbabwe, Madagascar, and Zambia. They are all poor and unstable, but coup d'etats are uncommon. I think what many overlook is the role of political culture in making coups common in West Africa. You see, all these countries experiencing coups today have a rich history of coup d'etats. As military leaders have become accustomed to grabbing power from civilian leaders, they have become more effective at taking advantage of political instability and disputes to seize power. With institutions such as the judiciary and legislature ineffective in resolving civilian political disputes, coup d'etats have become normalized or even desired pathways of removing unpopular leaders from power. So, what are the implications of these coup d'etats for citizens of the affected countries and the African continent as a whole? As coup d'etats spread like wildfire, it's not France or the West that are at a loss. While they may lose influence through ineffective but democratically elected leaders, the loss is limited to the inability to push for their agenda. Rather, the coup d'etats will have devastating effects on the social and political culture of the affected countries. You see, while democracies may fail to resolve issues of a country fast enough, citizens have a role in punishing leaders who fail to perform. I mean, look at the case of El Salvador. Since the end of civil war in 1992, the country has struggled with high levels of violent crime and record-breaking murder rates. Gangs have terrorized residents who had to part with the security money to protect themselves from constant attacks. Democratically elected governments failed to resolve the issue for more than 3 decades. But Salvadorians' bet on Nayib Bukele paid off, as crackdown on gangs in 2022 and 2023 has reduced the murder rate to almost zero for a country that had the highest murder rate in the world in 2022.
Now, for residents like Maritza, a shopkeeper, there's a new sense of freedom.
La seguridad era bastante mala.
It was really unsafe. We couldn't leave our doors open because guys we didn't want to associate with would come in. They'd come to shops, ask for rent that people had to pay. Other shops had to give them food, anything they wanted.
But with the military juntas, citizens would have had no recourse in case military leaders failed to perform. In many ways, the junta regimes that have taken over power in Burkina Faso, Mali and Guinea have underperformed the democratic government they overthrew. In fact, civil liberties, economic situation and security situation in all these countries has become even worse under military leadership. For instance, in Guinea, erosion of civil liberties has worsened under Mamadi Doumbouya, who took over power from Alpha Condé. The main reason Condé was overthrown was the crackdown and imprisonment of political opponents who opposed his third term, secured through a disputed referendum. While many hoped the situation would change under the military junta, Doumbouya has used the same tactics as those used by the president he overthrew, by banning all demonstrations and imprisoning opposition leaders as well as prosecuting others. But it is the economic outcome for most of these countries that is most problematic. You see, unitary regimes in the Sahel regions have faced strong resistance to their hold on power. The countries face sanctions from economic bodies such as ECOWAS, which disrupt the trade between them and their neighbors. With many facing economic crisis, they can also not access affordable funding from bodies such as the World Bank and IMF, which would be vital in propping up the economy. The economic climate makes not only foreign investment inflows rare, but also investment by domestic civilians. The result is the exacerbation of poverty that is forcing citizens in these countries to flee to neighboring countries such as Ghana and Nigeria. But with the junta regimes lacking institutions that could hold them into account, the citizens also lack recourse to voting out these leaders, which is an available option even in fluid democracies. While junta leaders have framed the coups through the lens of gaining independence from Imperial France, few have offered better alternatives for getting their citizens out of decades of poverty. In his speech in a meeting with Russia, Burkina Faso junta leader Ibrahim Traoré blamed the West for why Africa remained poor despite having rich natural resources. So one is left to wonder, are there any case studies of countries that have become advanced economies from allying with countries such as Russia and China? The speech by Traoré is reflective of the lack of ideas that these military juntas have on pathways their countries must follow to become industrialized. As such, no economic miracles will happen for these countries under unelected junta leaders. Even as the coups spreading in West Africa are framed through the lens of failed France influence, French citizens have little truth. Rather, West African countries are the ones stuck in a coup cycle that has characterized the region since independence. While many have celebrated the coups as African countries freeing themselves from the shackles of neocolonialism, it appears that the more things change, the more they remain the same, as junta leaders look to China and Russia for support. This does not only root these countries in neocolonialism of a new form, but also puts them in a path to autocracy. But the coups in West Africa do not have implications for the affected countries only, but the continent as well. They have forced other strongmen in Africa to move to shake up military leadership to avoid the same fate. The wave of coup d'etats could see more leaders choose to corrupt military at the expense of pursuing development for its people. As this dark cloud passes over Africa, it's unlikely that the threat of being voted out will be the most important for African leaders. The losers in this struggle to influence Africa are not Western countries such as France or the US. Rather, citizens of these countries are the main losers as they remain stuck with junta leaders they cannot hold into account.